Okay, I said I would record this, and so I'm going to. I did clip off the first part. This is anatomical position again. The body faces forward, the palms face forward. The feet are actually at about a 45-degree angle. Okay, and the body is upright. This is anatomical position, and we'll make every reference that we can to this. Now, sometimes we slip and we say up or down when we shouldn't, but we can get away with it if we know what we're talking about, and the person we're talking to does too. Okay. The directional terms. The first one is superior. One part of the body is higher than the other. So, for instance, your nose is superior to your chin. It's higher up than your chin. Okay. Uh, this doesn't refer to the quality of anything. There's something that is superior is not better. Okay. The eye is superior to the nose. The eyebrow is superior to the orbit of the eye. I think that gets superior across fairly easily. And as I said, this first lecture is very easy. Inferior. That's when a part of the body is lower than another part of the body. Okay. In anatomical position. So if we think of the face again, the mouth is inferior to the nose. The navel is inferior to the sternum. The chin is inferior to the mandible or to the mouth. Again, it's not a term of quality. Lateral. Lateral is a term that we use when something is moved away from the center of the body or is farther away from the center of the body than something else is. So, my arms are lateral to my chest. Put your hands out in front of you. Do you have your fingernails showing? They shouldn't be. You want the palms showing. Okay? If the palms are now showing, your thumbs are lateral to all four of the other digits on each hand. The index finger is lateral to the middle finger, ring fingers, and small or little fingers. Medial is towards the midline, something more towards the midline. So, for instance, the sternum again. The sternum is medial to the arms. Back to the hands. If you have them out in front of you, don't have the fingernails showing, turn it over, and name me the medial digit to the ring fingers. There's only one. Medial digit to the ring fingers. What's that going to be?
The pinky?
Yep, the pinky.
No.
Okay. I don't think pinky is in our book, but it works. Proximal and distal. Okay, think of your arm or look at your arm. The shoulder is the part that's most attached to the body, and then the rest of the arm is less attached, farther away attached. The shoulder is proximal to the elbow. The shoulder is proximal to the wrist. The shoulder is proximal to the hand. Whereas on the other hand, the shoulder, well, no, The elbow is distal to the shoulder. The wrist is distal to the shoulder. Distal, farthest away, farthest away. Anterior is towards the front. So we've all done it. We've all walked into a wall or something. I'm sure you have. Or I'm the only crazy one in the bunch. If you look at the front of the body, that's all the anterior portion, and the posterior portion is the back. When we are referring to right and left in anatomical position, we are always referring to the right or left of the specimen, not to our right or left. So if two people shake hands ever again, if two people shake hands and they use right hands, okay, well, they crisscross across the bodies. The right hand of one reaches the right hand of the other, but it's on the other side. This has absolutely nothing to tell you that's new. It's just showing you. Okay, we can start here with your feet. Proximal is towards the hip.
Yeah, yes, there is.
I don't.
Wait, I have it.
Distal is away from the hip. Distal on the arm is away from the shoulder, whereas proximal is towards the shoulder. Towards the midline is medial, and going away from the midline is lateral. Nothing different with this guy, except anterior is this side, this entire front side. Okay, posterior is the entire back side. They're showing you inferior here, not to be confused. It just means going downward, superior upward. Proximal again going up, and distal going down, just like on her. The planes of the body are three. They're the frontal, sagittal, and transverse plane. Here's the frontal plane first off. If this person somehow managed to walk through a mirror or a window, got stuck halfway through, here's the window. Okay, here's the plane. Then this person would be sectioned in a frontal plane. If the person was standing waist deep, in this case, in water, then that person is sectioned right here in a transverse plane. And not that it's likely, but if a person were able to walk sideways through some partition, glass, for instance, and got cut right down the middle, then the person would be sectioned in a sagittal plane. The second part of this short lecture is on articulations, otherwise known as joints. Okay. We all have plenty of joints, and depending upon how they're put together, they get different names. Again, the date, so we know where we are at, and articulations are joints. Okay. First, we had the nomenclature for naming, and now we have the joints themselves. Articulations are also known as joints. Almost any book that we read discusses joints as to their structural makeup and also their functional makeup. And they do it separately, which I feel is crazy. Your book now, I picked that one because it has it correctly. What we need to do is look at a joint in its entirety and as it functions and also its structure. Here are the functional types of joints. We're just going to do the functional types first. How they work together. The first is the synarthrotic joint. Now these words may seem long, but pretty soon they're going to seem like easy stuff. Not tonight, maybe by Thursday. A synarthrotic joint is a joint that is not movable. It's immovable. Okay. The bones have come together so well and they don't move. Okay. Probably the best looking synarthrotic joint that we can think of is in the skull. We have sutures. Here's a suture, and here's a suture. Here's the forehead, and here's the base of the skull. And these bones here and here, which are both parietal bones, are interdigitating. That it's increasing the surface area tremendously. And small osseous fibers, bony hairs, interconnect both sides. The same thing is happening on a smaller scale here with the coronal suture joining the frontal bone to the two parietal bones. The main word to get out of here is synarthrotic. The second type of bone is amphiarthrotic as far as function is concerned. These bones are slightly movable, just slightly. If you take your arm, just one arm, put it out and twist it as far as it goes in either direction, twist it. Well, there's two bones in the forearm and they barely move against each other. They do move, but they don't move much. If they move too far, you call it a sprain. Bones that are slightly movable, like the radius and ulna, are said to be slightly movable and amphiarthrotic. Also, in your lower leg, below the knee, you have two bones, the tibia and the fibula, and they twist slightly against each other, but only slightly. The diarthrotic bone is the third type. These are said to be fully movable. Fully movable, that's really a lie. There's no fully movable joints. There's no fully movable diarthrotic bones. If something was fully movable, you could take your head and twist it around and around like in The Exorcist, but that doesn't happen. But these are highly movable bones. If you look around, look at yourself in a mirror, if you're writing, if you're using a keyboard, whatever you're doing, If you see motion in a human being, it's because of a diarthrotic, fully movable joint. We have more of these types of joints than any other. Okay. Now, I'm pretty well known for asking uh, 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 what type of something is this? Which one is the most? And in this case, an example, the most numerous joint is the diarthrotic joint. You're sitting there maybe thinking they'd be easier to learn if I knew what diarthrotics stood for. You can break them apart, it's not hard. Di meaning two, arthrotic meaning bones. Okay. Usually there are two bones involved, sometimes though three, in a diarthrotic joint. Structural types of bones. Structural. That means how the joints come together. And the first is fibrous. Fibrous joints have, just like the name says, fibers between them. I mentioned osseous fibers a moment ago, but we can have cartilaginous fibers. These are going to be needle thick fibers stretching from one bone to the next in great numbers to hold them together. The cartilaginous joint has two bones or two parts of future bones held together by hyaline cartilage. Now, you don't have to remember from high school or even Bio 20 what hyaline cartilage is. You're going to know it backwards and forwards. I don't think there's anything in this class you have to worry about bringing forward from the past. Okay, I think you'll get it all here. The cartilaginous joints have cartilage between them. And this cartilage often cushions the two bones. We all know what cartilage is. We've seen it at times. Fish mainly have cartilage, but the chicken breast, we call it a breastbone, but it's cartilage. It's like plastic. Okay. As a person grows older, if they have a cartilaginous joint, two bones joined with cartilage in between, the cartilage may disintegrate as the bone grows, and the two parts become one bone. The synovial joint is a joint that is freely movable also. And in between two bones, sometimes three, but usually two, it has a pouch filled with liquid. Okay. These joints are always movable, so they are also diarthrotic immediately backing up. Okay. Most of the joints of the human body are synovial joints. Since these are the ones that are freely movable, it goes along with what I said a moment ago that most of the freely movable joints in the body are synovial joints and diarthritic or diarthrotic, either way you want to say it, joints. You have a synovial pouch, which I have a picture of for you in just a second. You have a synovial pouch in between at least two bones. Picture your femur and tibia. If you don't know the tibia as well, the tibia, you can call it the shin bone. Okay. These come together but are covered by the kneecap or patella. Between the femur and the tibia, there is a pouch, like a little whoopee cushion. Okay. And that braces one bone against the other, cushioning it so that as you walk and walk and walk, or jump and jump and jump, this cushions the blow when the bones come together when they strike the ground. The synovial pouch, which I call the whoopee cushion, so that you can think of it, the synovial pouch itself is filled with, of all things, how imaginative, it's filled with synovial fluid. Does anybody know or want to make a guess as to how many milliliters or cc's are close enough together of fluid brace the femur and the tibia and fill the synovial pouch? How many, how much fluid is there in your knee?
Like 10 cc's of fluid?
Okay, thank you for the guess, but it's only four. Four. It's amazing that, you know, to get around on that, or for how long you can get around on it. I found out how long you can get around on it. I used to go hiking up Mount San Jacinto. I loved that. Uh, Up Saddleback or Peak or uh, just everywhere. Love to hike. Wore it out, wore it completely out. And over Christmas, my present to myself was to get a new knee. And it worked out well. I don't know why I can't. Oh, here we go. Okay, now let's look at this little chart here. Fibrous joints. And this is referring to the structural side. This is referring to the functional side. Fibrous joints that are not movable. Fibrous joints that are synarthrotic. This is like taking a shoe with a lace and tightening that lace so tight. You know, you're really uncomfortable in the shoe. The fibers lace the shoe. The fibrous synarthrotic joint is either a suture or a gomphosis. I think everybody got an idea of a suture. I showed you two sutures up at the top. Okay, this was the coronal suture, I didn't name it. And this one is the sagittal suture. We'll learn all of them. Those are sutures, they're immovable. Your head should be immovable. It wasn't when you were a kid. When you were a newborn, you had fontanelles and your head is squishy. Uh, Agomphosis is the joining of a tooth with the jaw. So all of your gum foci are limited to the teeth. If you pull a tooth and you leave a peg hole, that would still be considered a gomphosis. Fibrous, slightly movable joints, fibrous amphiarthrotic joints are called syndesmoses. There's a term that's going to take a couple of times saying it to get ready for it. I mean to know it. A syndesmosis is a slightly movable joint. How do we know? It's in this category. And it's fibrous. This is the one found between the radius and the ulna and the tibia and the fibula that we mentioned a moment ago. Okay. This is like taking and loosening the shoelace, but not much. You've loosened the shoelace enough to wiggle your foot a bit inside the shoe. Whereas with the suture, it's tied tight. Fibrous joints are never fully movable, so there is no category here. Cartilaginous joints. These are the ones where I said hyaline cartilage intersperses itself between two bones, sometimes three. A cartilaginous joint that is not movable. A cartilaginous joint that is synarthrotic, not movable, is a synchondrosis. When your arms are forming, when your humerus is forming, take that one because I figure you might know that, okay? You've got a mid portion and you got a distal end and you got a proximal end. So on your arm, you got upper, middle, and lower on your upper arm. There are three parts. The upper arm is separated by cartilage from your middle arm, which is separated by cartilage from your lower arm. And that cartilage stays there, increases in size as your arm grows. But sooner or later, your arm grows to completion, and the upper and middle arm join, and the cartilage disappears. And the middle and lower join, and the cartilage disappears. Before that disappearance, however, you have cartilage there, and that's a synchondrosis. Another type of cartilaginous joint is a symphysis, which is a slightly movable joint. The most common example of the symphysis is the pubic symphysis in the front of the pubic bone itself. This can stretch, this can break, rupture during childbirth. Okay. The cartilaginous amphiarthrotic joint is a symphysis. Also, between the vertebra of your back, as you bend over, you can only bend over a slight bit between each two vertebrae. If you look at the ground, how much does it take before you want to bend over and pick it up? A quarter? I would as a kid, but I won't now. Would you bend over for and pick up $1? Hmm. $5? As you bend over to pick up anything completely off the ground, you have a slight amount of bending between each vertebra. And it's only slight because it's amphiarthrotic and it's cartilage. It's a symphysis, each vertebral joint. Cartilaginous joints are never fully movable, so we put none there. The synovial joint is never slightly movable, so it's fully movable, so there's none there. And it's never just partly movable, so there's none there. You get off the hook. Synovial joint is fully movable, and for lack of a more imaginative name, it's also just called a synovial joint. The synovial joint is the one with the pouch. None of the others have a pouch. Here's the synovial joint. Here's the pouch, which contains synovial fluid. Bone above it, bone below it. There is a bit of articular cartilage here to protect the bone itself. But the thing that does the greatest protection is the synovial cavity. Some terms then to review. Sutures are fibrous and movable joints. Okay, now you may have to go back up to the chart, fibrous, and we know that word means a movable joint. Gomphoses, these are the joints between the tooth and the mandible or the maxilla. Syndesmoses, these are fibrous, slightly movable joints. Let's see, here's syndesmoses, fibrous, slightly movable, or we can say amphiarthrotic. Synchondroses, the CHON, you know that R shouldn't be there. Didn't know that. I'll have to get rid of that. The synchondroses are cartilaginous and immovable. These occur between the growing points of bones. And those growing points that I talked about between the three parts of the humerus, those are epiphyseal plates. Epiphyseal plates. Don't worry that this is the only time you're ever going to see this and the only chance you have to remember it. No, it's not going to be the case at all. There'll be plenty of times. A symphysis is a cartilaginous and slightly movable joint between the vertebra and the pubic bones, which makes the pubic symphysis. The synovial joints, freely movable joints that have a fluid-filled pouch to cushion two or more bones. The bursae, my last term, was not shown up here. These are small pouches that may accompany the synovial joint to help cushion it. Where? Here along the sides, little pouches. Unfortunately, though, they often get inflamed and lead to bursitis, and you just as soon not have them at all. Okay. Did I leave you with any questions? I'm more concerned about the mechanics of the course. I don't want to leave you with questions there that I can answer now. It's actually faster to rush through almost anything online. Don't have to run and get a model or something like that. But I don't know if it's the best way to do it. So anyway, what I want to do is we're going to shorten today and go longer on Thursday. By longer, I don't mean incredibly longer. I mean we're going to finish in the bones of the skull, start and finish. I used to do that in one day anyway, but I haven't done it for quite some time. I would like to do that. And if you are interested in trying to get ahead, you would begin reading chapter 7. Okay, chapter 7 is not one that you're going to outline. Chapter 1, you and I already covered today. So if you want to get an outline busy for chapter 1, you can go ahead for that. Okay. Uh, for chapter 9, we also went over it today, and you can work on your outlines for that if you would. Okay. Now, uh, as far as the 110 is concerned, if you looked at the schedule of classes, did you notice something strange? On Tuesday, we have lecture, and then we have 110, and then we have lab, suppose in that order. Whereas on Thursday, we have lecture, bio 11, and a blank spot, and then we have lab. Did you notice the blank spot?
Yes.
Okay. Usually somebody asks me about it. That blank spot is crazy. That blank spot is a total waste of time. So uh, on Thursday, we will not have a blank spot. It will go from two. Will be scheduled from 2 to 6. Okay, instead of 2 to 7, there will be no 2 to 7. Doesn't make any sense. We'll do the same amount of material, uh, and so we'll work right through the blank spot. Uh, does the time that you see on your schedule reflect what's really going to happen? No, it doesn't. Normally, we would have a 1 hour lecture followed by a 3 hour lab. Okay, not counting the 110. A 1 hour lecture followed by a 3 hour lab that starts with about an hour and a half of lab lecture. And then the students, face to face, are allowed to work alone or work and call the instructor over. But there's no more lecture. Okay. So we have more than enough time for me to get the entire lecture done. And then more than enough time for me to either invite you to exit or to stay and work, study, and I'll stay with you the whole time and to answer questions. Okay. But you can figure you're not going to be uh, you're not going to be following quite that schedule. That's the time. That's the time frame that we have to work in. Okay. 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 Uh, since you look, I don't know if you look bewildered or what. Uh, because there's usually a lot of material that's going to be thrown at you at once, but you will be able to handle it. You'll be able to handle it. I'm going to go over uh, Bones of the Skull Part 1 just to get you started. I'm not going to run you through the whole thing, but if you come back to the modules here and you want to continue on, the module that is Bones and Structures of the Skull, Part 1 is where we're going to be starting. Okay. This you can follow along in Chapter 7. The large bone that we passed a while back, we saw it from a different angle. This is the parietal bone. Here's a suture right down the middle, the sagittal suture. Sagittal, if you remember sagittal plane, when somebody's cut, it's straight down the middle. I'm bringing the sagittal suture back, following it back, and now it's turning two ways into two lambdoidal sutures. This is the lambdoidal suture. Comes down behind the ear and then up over the ear by way of the squamosal suture. There's one other suture that I showed you, but I can't show you on this skull. I'm sure I can on another one, and that's the coronal suture. Okay, so four sutures: sagittal, lambdoidal, squamosal, and the parietal. Sorry, not parietal. The coronal suture runs along the front. Let's find it. Okay, here's the coronal suture. Those four sutures surround the parietal bones. Here's the parietal bone here and here. And then at the base of your skull is your occipital bone. With that bump at the back of your head, the external occipital protuberance. bones and figure locations. Okay. These are the bones that you're going to be required to know for the examination. Many of them aren't bones, many of them are structures. The sutures, here are the 4 sutures that we just went over. Okay. Now, where can you find them? One, you can find them in the module, and you can wait for me on Thursday to go over all of these, every one. Or you can use your book, and I have for Mariev's book, the figure number, figure 7.4. Okay. Well, why don't I put page number? Because some of you are using book 7, 8, or 9, and they shuffle up the page numbers, but they never shuffle up the figure numbers. So if you want to find the sagittal suture, you'll look at figure 7.5 and 7.4 for the next 3. Parietal bone, frontal bone, all of these, I found the figure numbers for you. And we're going to be covering all of these. Okay. And I intend on Thursday to cover all of these. That brings us up to what I call speed. If you want to get a head start, you may. You don't need to. You don't need to. Okay.
Mr. Harrison?
Yep.
My book has all these figures, and I think it's good.
Okay. So I don't have people to usually just saying that's good. So thank you. Okay. Okay, so you have all those pictures, those figures. I wrote you last night or this morning, suggesting that you print yourself a copy of that so that you'll have it separate from your device, and you can look at it while we're talking about these, and you can also be using your book at the same time. Okay, that makes the most sense to me. Okay. Um, I don't know if it's your last time, or it should be your last time. I don't know if it's your first time taking this class or not. I know that it isn't for everyone, but I never make a point of finding out who's taking it for a second time. That's not my concern. My concern is you don't waste your time. You get through it. If this is your first time, make it your last time. Okay, and enjoy it. Uh, uh, it's too bad we can't have sort of study groups that always liven things up. Okay, you're going to find that as far as recordings are concerned, well, yeah,